Hey, hi, okay, so I had this whole video planned for this week about Diablo 4, because I've never played the game before, the expansion's coming out, and it's very cool. Or that's what I would have done had I not spent 27 hours playing Mechabellum this week. So instead today, I'm going to talk to you about digital cocaine. Greetings gamers, my name is Kamikaze, and as I said, Mechabellum is digital cocaine. It's cheap, it gives a crazy high, and once you start, it's all you're ever going to think about. But what is it? It's an auto chess RTS thing? It sort of plays like a hybrid of TFT and StarCraft 2. Actually, if this is a really niche reference, but the closest thing I can think of is if you played the StarCraft 2 arcade, it reminds me a lot of Nexus Wars. And if you get that reference, I love you, romantically. But if you're someone who had sex in high school, let me try to explain how the game works. At the beginning of each match, you select a specialist. There are a bunch of them, but every match you're given the choice of one of 4 randomly selected ones. The game is broken up into rounds, each round consisting of 2 phases, the deployment phase and the battle phase, and yeah, they're pretty self-explanatory. During the deployment phase, you get to buy new units, upgrade existing ones, and use your little commander power stratagem things. During the battle phase, you do nothing. This is an auto chess, auto battle type of thing, so your units control themselves. You get to sit back and watch as your army goes and engages in glorious battle with the enemy. Or if you're like me, you're going to sit forward even more and have your eyes glued to the screen because you're way too invested. The thing that I love about this game is that it's almost 100% about strategy. There's a little bit of RNG to spice things up, but for the most part, it's just brain versus brain. Whereas in a game like StarCraft, obviously strategy is important, but if I'm playing against a Korean Grandmaster with 600 APM, it doesn't matter if I think of a good counter to what they're doing, because they're just going to do it so much faster that I don't have a chance. Mechabellum basically removes that. It's all unit counters and mind games. Am I going to build a counter to his unit? Well, he knows that I'm going to try and counter it, so he's going to build a counter to my counter. But what if I think even further ahead, and I counter his counter to my counter? It's beautiful. And there's so many units giving you options, and all of those units cost different amounts of money, and this game just goes so deep. Like, let me give you an example, right? Let's say your opponent opens the game by building a bunch of fangs, which are a swarm of little shooty robots. The obvious counter here would be for me to build an arc light, which is a cheap unit that's good at dealing with swarms. But my opponent, he's a smart cookie, right? He knows I'll build an arc light. So he goes and pre-counters my arc light with a couple marksmen, which are long-range single target threats. Uh-oh, now I'm countered again. But what if instead of building an arc light, I go ahead and buy a squad of Mustangs. Mustangs are these little tanks that are decent with dealing with swarms, but really good at dealing with marksmen. And all of this is just wave 2. There are 25 units in the game at the moment, and 21 of them are always available. As I mentioned, there is a little bit of RNG. After every round, you get to select one of a couple different randomly picked bonuses for you. Anything from items to help your units out, to free units, or to unlocking special ones. There could even be... Wow! Is that a subscribe button? Crazy! You should click it though. I hear it will bring you good luck in all your matches. Anyway, I like this system. It shakes things up every game, and you never know when your opponent is going to whip out the fire badgers. Generally, every unit is good at one specific thing. Those fire badgers I mentioned, they're small, fast, and good at clearing hordes. Melting Point is a big, chunky UFO thing that excels at killing other big stuff. Hackers, mobile shields, and they can take over enemy units, which is complete horseshit, by the way. Fortress, big slow mech with bigger guns. Scorpion, Scorpiotron that shoots lightning balls and turns into a frickin' siege tank if you buy this upgrade. And call me Dean Kamen, because let's talk about upgrades. Your units are not something you can just set and forget. No, no, no. Every unit has 4 different upgrades that cost a lot of money, but obviously make your units better. Some of them are just straight stat upgrades like more range or move speed, but some of them almost completely change how the unit works. Like the one I just mentioned about turning your Scorpion into a siege tank. It massively increases the range, but it makes it unable to shoot anything right next to it. So I can build a bunch of Scorpions with this upgrade to rain down fire from afar, but if I don't defend them, then my opponent might build a bunch of Rhinos, which are these fast melee robots, to absolutely ruin my day. All of this is wonderful. But I do now have to mention the progression system, because it feels a bit half-baked, and it's probably my biggest complaint with the game. Basically, you get XP from playing matches, and every time you level up, you get a tech point. Tech points can then be used to research different upgrades for units. You can swap out ones you don't like for these ones to buy in-game. It's fine. It kind of feels, though, like it's only there because they needed to have some sort of progression system. You level up pretty fast, and since the locked upgrades can't be massively better than the already unlocked ones for balance reasons, I only bought a few things, and then I was just sitting on a ton of tech points the whole time. I'm sure once you get better at the game, you figure out which ones are better, which ones are bad. It'll be nice to have options, but for now, I don't even remember which upgrades I have by default for every unit, so it was a bit forgettable. And since I'm on the complain train, I would like to be able to see what their stats before I spend money to unlock them, please. I know this is something you'll eventually remember with enough time, but there are 25 units with 4 upgrades each. That's 100 upgrades to remember. My brain is too clogged trying to remember League of Legends spells and Counter-Strike callouts for this. Anyway, the game has several different modes. For PvP, there is the classic 1v1, 2v2, and 4-player free-for-all. 1v1 is obviously the sort of main competitive mode the game is balanced for, but the free-for-all mode is definitely my favorite. It's less stressful, and it's super chaotic. Very fun. My only problem with it is that 90 seconds feels like a long time between rounds. Like in 1v1s, I get it, don't rush people, all about the strategy, but in free-for-all, maybe cut it to like 60 seconds, just to keep the pace up. Again, this is the silly mode. Beyond PvP though, there is also survival mode, which is actually super fun. There's like 10 different difficulties, from very easy all the way to Insanity 4, each pitting you against an increasing number of waves of enemies. The enemies change up completely every round though, and your units will be deleted if they die too many times. And I'll tell you right now, survival does not mess around. It is hard. Honestly, I think this is the mode I've played the most because I'm stubborn and I want to beat it. And while I could probably look up a guide, suck my nuts, I want to figure it out myself. And so far, it's not going super great. Finally, there are community challenges where people basically create their own survival challenges and you can try to beat them. And I like that it keeps track of like the success rate. That's kind of the neat inclusion there. And that's Mechabellum. It's a fun, deep strategy game that looks nice and only costs $15. This has been a bit of a shorter video because there's not even really a whole lot to say about the game. It's very good. That's it. Goodbye.